The galaxy was a place of endless stars, countless worlds, and unbroken histories. Civilizations rose, clashed, and fell like waves upon a cosmic sea. Among these many empires there was one called the Veyrathi Dominion, a proud and ancient people known for their elegance and long memories. They believed themselves unmatched, heirs to legacies stretching back thousands of years. But even the mighty had once needed help, and long ago, they had received it from a species few thought important: humans. It began centuries earlier, when the Veyrathi colony of Envaris was attacked by raiders. The invaders came in swarms, brutal and merciless. The Veyrathi fleet was far away, unable to respond quickly. Just as their cities were about to fall, a small group of human explorers, travelers from a wild, distant planet, answered their call. The humans were not strong in numbers, nor were their ships advanced. Their weapons were simple compared to the empires of the galaxy. Yet they fought with a kind of fire that startled everyone who saw it. The humans had no obligation to help. They owed nothing to the Veyrathi. Still, they stood their ground, holding the skies long enough for reinforcements to arrive. Many of their small ships were lost, but their courage saved thousands of lives. The Veyrathi swore an oath of life debt. If ever humanity should call for aid, the Dominion shall answer. It was a promise carved into their records and remembered by their elders, but time eroded memories. As centuries passed, the galaxy changed. The Veyrathi grew strong again, their fleets unmatched, their wealth overflowing. Humans, however, remained small on the galactic stage. Other empires looked at them with mixed feelings: curiosity, caution, sometimes disdain. They were called Deathworlders, a reference to Earth's dangerous storms, unpredictable climates, and violent predators. Most alien species assumed that such a world would produce short-lived, fragile beings. The fact that humans thrived there seemed strange, perhaps even unnatural. Yet despite their resilience, humans were dismissed as insignificant. They had no vast empire, no ancient traditions stretching millennia. Their colonies were modest, scattered, and vulnerable. Over time, the old promise made to them by the Veyrathi became little more than a half-remembered story. Younger generations of Veyrathi laughed when it was mentioned. Why should they keep such an oath to a minor species? The galaxy had moved on. Then came the new threat. A coalition of alien powers, greedy and confident, turned their eyes toward human colonies. Humanity had settled fertile worlds with rich minerals and abundant resources. The coalition believed humans would be easy prey. They whispered among themselves, "The Deathworlders are tough, yes, but they are not strong enough to resist fleets." They saw an opportunity for quick conquest. One by one, human colonies were surrounded. Trade routes were cut. Signals of distress went out into the void. Humanity pleaded with the Galactic Council, begging for help, but most powers remained silent. Why risk their fleets for a minor people? Why anger the coalition? Yet far away in the Veyrathi Dominion, the old records stirred once more. In the High Council chamber, ancient archivists spoke of the forgotten oath. They reminded the leaders of Envaris of the human ships that had once stood in fire to defend them. The counselors argued. Some scoffed. That was long ago. We owe them nothing now. Others shifted uncomfortably. Veyrathi culture prized honor, and to abandon an oath was no small matter. At last, silence fell when one elder spoke. You may dismiss them as weak. You may laugh at their small fleets. But remember this: humanity does not forget. They have not forgotten the battles they fought for us. And if we fail them now, they will come to collect this debt themselves. When humans are betrayed, they do not forgive. They endure. And when the time is right, they rise with a vengeance the galaxy will never expect. The chamber grew cold at her words. For though many dismissed humanity, every empire had heard stories, rumors carried by traitors and mercenaries. Tales of human soldiers who fought beyond reason, of explorers who survived against impossible odds, of colonies that rebuilt themselves even after destruction. They were a people shaped by hardship, by a homeworld that never gave them peace. And while others thought this made them fragile, some quietly feared it made them unbreakable. The distress signals continued. Human voices echoed through the network, desperate, angry, but unyielding. They would fight even alone, even against impossible odds. The galaxy, watching from afar, shook its head. Another small species crushed by larger powers. That was the way of things. But the Veyrathi elders knew better. If humanity fell, the promise of centuries past would be broken. And if that happened, the humans would remember. They would rise again, stronger, harsher, with no mercy for those who turned their backs. The question was not whether to help. The question was whether the galaxy was ready for what would happen if humans decided to repay debts in their own way. The council voted. Reluctantly, uneasily, they agreed to send aid. But deep inside, many of them already knew the time for small gestures was over. The humans would not wait forever. Their fleets were already moving, their colonies already arming, and somewhere in the quiet dark between the stars the galaxy trembled, though it did not yet know why. The galaxy had been silent when humanity called for help. Empires looked away. Councils turned cold. A few voices whispered of honor, but most saw no reason to risk their fleets for a species so small. Humanity was left to stand alone, or so the galaxy believed. In the deep void of space, far from the eyes of their rivals, the humans had been building. For decades they had prepared, not for conquest, but for survival. Their homeworld had taught them a single lesson: nothing came without struggle. Every storm, every disaster, every war on Earth had hardened them. When they reached the stars, they carried this lesson with them. They did not build fleets for glory. They built fleets to endure. Now, with alien armadas descending upon their colonies, it was time to reveal what they had kept hidden. The first strike came against the colony world of Argent's Reach. The alien coalition expected an easy victory. Their cruisers dropped from hyperspace, sleek and confident, weapons glowing as they locked onto human cities. Broadcasts from their commanders mocked the defenders. Surrender and we will spare your lives. Resist and you will be erased. The humans did not reply with surrender. They replied with silence. Then the skies shifted. Out of the black came shadows. Massive warships, their hulls unpolished and scarred, built for battle rather than beauty. They were not elegant like Veyrathi vessels, nor shining like the fleets of wealthier empires. These ships looked like predators, designed with brutal lines and heavy armor. Entire hangars opened to release swarms of smaller craft, fighters that moved like blades of light. The Terran expeditionary fleet had arrived. The coalition ships, once so confident, hesitated. They had expected outdated human patrols, a few frigates at most. Instead, they faced carriers the size of mountains, dreadnoughts bristling with weapons, and frigates armed with rail cannons capable of tearing through shields. Even the hum of human engines seemed different, lower, rougher, like the growl of a beast waiting to strike. The first volley came without warning. Human dreadnoughts fired mass drivers that cut through alien shields as if they were paper. Fighters streaked across the void, weaving through enemy formations with impossible precision. Coalition commanders barked orders, but their formations crumbled under the sudden storm. In the middle of the chaos, a small Veyrathi fleet arrived, keeping their old oath. They had sent only a token force, uncertain of what to expect. Yet when they dropped into orbit and saw the human fleet in motion, silence filled their command decks. The Veyrathi had believed humans fragile. What they witnessed now was something else entirely. By the stars, whispered a Veyrathi captain, This is what they have been hiding. The humans fought not with desperation, but with ruthless precision. Every shot counted. Every maneuver was calculated. They did not waste strength. They used it like a blade. One by one, coalition ships erupted in flames, their wreckage drifting across the void. Panic spread through the coalition. Their admirals, once so sure of victory, began to shout over open channels. Some ordered retreat. Others demanded reinforcements. None of it mattered. The humans pressed forward with relentless force, their ships moving as if guided by a single will. On the surface of Argent's Reach, colonists stood in awe. They had prepared for the worst, ready to fight with rifles and courage alone if the fleet failed. Now they watched as the sky itself burned, not with their destruction, but with the destruction of their enemies. For the first time in weeks, hope spread through their streets. The battle was not just a defense. It was a message. Across the galactic networks, images of the conflict spread. Grainy footage showed human dreadnoughts splitting alien cruisers in half, fighters striking with unflinching coordination, and coalition fleets breaking under the assault. For the rest of the galaxy, it was the first true look at humanity's war machine. And it was terrifying. Empires that had once dismissed Earth now whispered in fear. Traitors sent hurried messages. The Death Worlders are not weak. They are not fragile. They are something else entirely. Rumors grew faster than the truth itself. Some said humanity had forged alliances with hidden powers. Others claimed their ships were built with technology stolen from ancient ruins. But the truth was far simpler. Humans had learned to survive by preparing for the worst. On the bridge of the flagship TNS Resolute, Admiral Carter watched the battlefield unfold. His voice was calm, his orders precise. Around him, officers moved with discipline. None of them cheered as the coalition burned. None smiled as enemy ships shattered. They fought with the same determination their ancestors had shown on Earth's battlefields. To them, this was not glory. It was duty. The Veyrathi commander sent a private transmission to Carter. Her voice carried both awe and unease. Humanity, you did not ask for our aid. You did not need it. Carter's reply was steady. We never asked for conquest, but when survival is threatened, we answer. The Veyrathi officers exchanged uneasy glances. They had pledged to help humanity, yet it was clear now who truly held the power. The humans were no longer the small explorers who had once come to their rescue. They were something far greater, something the galaxy had underestimated. By the battle's end, half the coalition fleet was destroyed. The rest scattered, retreating into hyperspace, their courage broken. Wreckage drifted in orbit, a graveyard of shattered hulls. The humans did not pursue. They held their ground, secured their colony, and signaled victory. But the message was already sent. News spread like wildfire. On distant worlds, alien leaders gathered in fear. Some spoke of forming alliances with humanity before it was too late. Others demanded preparation for the day humans might turn their strength outward. Across the galaxy, the same words were whispered. If this is how they fight for survival, what happens when they fight for vengeance? The humans did not boast. They did not send threats. Instead, they rebuilt their colonies, salvaged wreckage, and prepared for the next strike. They knew the war was far from over. The coalition would not forgive defeat so easily. But humanity also knew something greater. The galaxy had seen their strength. The Deathworlders were no longer a forgotten species. They had repaid a debt in the only way they knew how, through action. And somewhere in the silence of space, the galaxy trembled again. The coalition fleets lay broken. Across human space, wreckage drifted silently in orbit, a graveyard of alien warships that once promised conquest, but had instead found ruin. For the people of Earth and its colonies, this victory was not a triumph to be celebrated with cheers, but a hard truth. Survival had been bought with fire and steel, yet the war was not over. The alien coalition, though beaten at Argent's reach, still held vast fleets and powerful worlds. They had underestimated the humans once, but they would not make that mistake again. In secret chambers, coalition leaders shouted and argued. Some demanded an immediate second strike. Others trembled, whispering of the new threat humanity posed. Old rivalries broke open inside the coalition as blame was cast back and forth. Fear began to erode their unity. Meanwhile, humanity pressed forward. The Terran expeditionary fleet did not rest. It advanced from one colony to the next, striking swiftly at enemy positions, dismantling supply lines, and breaking sieges. Wherever humans fought, their tactics left an impression. They did not waste resources. They did not prolong battles. They struck with precision, ended the fight, and moved on. In every system they freed, human colonists greeted their fleet with tears and relief. They had lived under the shadow of destruction, and now they saw their defenders arrive like iron guardians. For many, it was the first time they realized that their species was no longer the small, fragile people the galaxy had once mocked. Humanity had become a force no empire could ignore. But it was at the Galactic Assembly that the true change was revealed. The Assembly was a council where empires gathered to speak, bargain, and threaten in equal measure. For centuries, humans had been quiet here, often ignored in the background while stronger voices argued over borders and trade. Now, as humanity's ambassadors walked into the Great Hall, every eye turned toward them. The Veyrathi delegation rose in respect. Unlike others, they remembered the debt. Their commanders had fought alongside the humans at Argent's reach, and they had seen what human fleets could do. They no longer laughed at the oath made centuries ago. They understood its weight. When the human ambassador took the floor, the hall fell silent. His voice was steady, without pride or anger, only clear and cold. Long ago, one of your empires made us a promise. When we were weak, when we were alone, The Veirathi said they would repay their debt if we were ever in need. That time came and they honored it. We do not forget such things. Humanity remembers its friends. He paused, his gaze sweeping across the assembly. Dozens of alien leaders shifted uneasily under his eyes. But we also remember those who turned away. While we cried for help, most of you closed your doors. You believed we would fall easily. You believed we were too small to matter. You were wrong. The chamber grew tense. Some leaders lowered their heads. Others glared offended, but none spoke. We do not come here to demand tribute. We do not seek your worlds or your crowns. We come with only one message: humanity keeps its promises. We repay our debts, whether in loyalty or in fire. Remember that when you decide how you treat us in the days ahead. For a long moment, the assembly was silent. Then the whispers began. Entire delegations leaned toward one another, voices low and fearful. News of the battles had already spread, but hearing the words directly from humanity's representative struck deeper than images of burning fleets. The Veirathi elder, seated beside her council, leaned back and closed her eyes. She remembered the words she had spoken in their own chamber. If we fail them, they will come to collect the debt themselves. Now she saw the truth of it. Humanity had not risen by demanding power. They had risen because no one could stop them. Outside the assembly, panic rippled across the galaxy. Civilizations rushed to reconsider their stance. Some sent envoys to Earth at once, offering alliances and trade agreements. Others fortified their borders, fearing the day human fleets might appear in their skies. Traders, smugglers, and travelers carried the same whispered message from world to world. The Death Worlders have shown their strength. They are not to be provoked. They are not to be betrayed. For humanity, the war ended not with conquest, but with a statement carved into history. The coalition, humiliated, sued for peace. Their fleets could not withstand another campaign. They offered reparations, retreating from human colonies and promising to leave them untouched. To them it was survival. To humanity, it was proof that they were no longer prey. On the colony of Argent's Reach, where it had all begun, survivors rebuilt their homes. Children who had once hidden in fear now played under skies watched by orbiting human ships. Families gathered and spoke of the day the fleet had arrived. They told stories of how the humans had stood together not for conquest but for each other. In the quiet after war, Admiral Carter walked the halls of his flagship, the TNS Resolute. He listened to the steady hum of the engines, the heartbeat of the fleet. Officers saluted as he passed, but his thoughts were not of glory. They were of the fallen, the ships lost, the people who would never return home. Victory had been necessary, but it had come with cost. Humanity had survived, yes, but at a price they would always carry. Still, he knew this. The galaxy would never dismiss them again. The Veirathi sent messages of respect, reaffirming their old oath. They knew humanity had surpassed them now, yet they did not regret their promise. Instead, they felt pride. Long ago, they had been saved by fragile explorers. Now they had lived to see those explorers rise into giants. And so the tale of the forgotten debt came to an end. Humanity had repaid it, not with tribute, not with conquest, but with a warning that echoed through the stars. Humans remember. Humans endure. And when the time comes, humans repay their debts in full. The galaxy trembled, not because humanity had sought fear, but because fear was all that remained when others finally understood the truth.